a great source of material, certainly content on this channel, came out of one of the goofiest stories that in modern, recent, let's say years, it has to be up there. The goofiest story, the goofiest concept. And it was made by a guy that for whatever reason keeps getting gigs, even though he doesn't seem to have much talent. And they even rewarded him despite him being canceled. They rewarded this weirdo with Blade. And we did a video on that talking about that. So you fail upwards when it comes to Marvel, certainly. So y'all forgot about that. That book never got released. And I'm talking about the New Warriors. And that was this whole New Warriors team that was not going to consist of the old team. And you had some characters like Snowflake and Safe Space. One of them was non-binary. I can't even remember which one. And then you had the fat chick. You had, what was it, the guy that's Screen Time or something like that. It was terrible. But we got some great content out of that. That video, I don't know if I'd ever seen a video get ratioed as much as it did. But not too long ago today, CBR, Access Media, had a guy write for them. And some of the rhetoric kind of used in this article I want to go through because it's so funny. Let's listen in or read in. What happened to the New Warriors 30th anniversary celebration? Although there are no Avengers, New Warriors have quite the history in the Marvel Universe as a team uniting several younger superheroes. The team's heyday was definitely back in the 1990s. Unfortunately, since then been seen as rather disposable by Marvel and typically vehicles for controversial storytelling. There was no better example of the latter than that planned 2020 relaunch of the team's book. The planned 6th volume of New Warriors was meant to be a more progressive, modern version of the team. Included an original cast. What was shown, however, was a misfire of ideas despite its inclusive aims. Since then, there's been no word on the book. Yeah, it was so bad. Marvel puts out terrible books, but this was so bad that they neglected to even put it out. And many believe that Marvel has quietly scrapped it. Here's how the most notorious team of New Warriors yet became victims, and this is what got me, of a very different kind of cancel culture. It's an odd way to word that. And this is, of course, the team, as you see right here, of Safe Space and Snowflake and the fat chick and Screen Time. I think that's Screen Time right there. Written and drawn, but I didn't know Daniel Kibbles and Bits actually. Oh no, he didn't draw it. He just wrote it. I was like, what? So Luciano, whoever, actually drew it. The planned 6th volume of the New Warriors was announced 2020 in March. The intention was for it to be released as part of the 30th anniversary of their original. And so it made sense that several old New Warriors would make their return. Speedball, Rage, and other members of the team's old roster will return to teach a new generation of heroes, all of whom were original characters. These New Warriors recruits were Screen Time, B Negative, Trailblazer, Snowflake, and Safe Space. Intended to make the New Warriors more accurate, these teens were meant to be reflective of a modern world and its demographics. By the way, the non-binary people don't actually make a significant portion of the demographic, by the way. If you're definitely talking about America. Unfortunately, audiences from all walks of life came together in disappointment with the way in which the characters were presented. It still gets me every time, bro. Look at this. Look at this design, man. The nature of 2020 New Warriors was obvious to anyone who saw the book's imagery created to appeal to the youth. The book instead felt instantly dated. The result was a series of questionable ideas that are for some reason played straight. For instance, Screen Time was a character described as being obsessed with memes. having gained superpowers after being exposed to experimental internet gas. It actually sounds quite funny, but the fact that so much of this was meant to be taken seriously was perhaps the biggest problem. Then there was the siblings of Snowflake and Safe Space, whose ironic names were only the beginning of their problems. The two were gifted with cryogenic, and force field powers. Their names reflected their abilities as they did the offensive slang that they're derived from. Apparently, the idea was that these two, one of whom was non-binary, were reclaiming the words, empowering themselves by using monikers meant to hurt them. It ended up coming off as a self-parody. Or like something supposedly created by the alt-right. Don't put that on. How you gonna put that on other people, man? What the alt-right? That who doesn't even exist to the degree that it ever existed of anyway. What y'all putting that on them for? What y'all putting that on alt-right for? They can't even go an article without bitching them fools, man. All right. So they're saying that it would have been, it sounds like something that the quote unquote alt-right, which is anybody to the right of Bernie Sanders, remember that, would have made to make fun of them, basically. And I could see the parody, certainly, but it wasn't a parody. And I think people knew that fairly obviously. It was just terrible. It says many of the ideas seem to be falling back on harmful stereotypes, making the supposedly progressive messaging be anything but. Fans took to the internet to criticize Marvel for greenlighting that book, so perhaps it's for the best that the finished product never saw the light of day. And they talk about the COVID-19 pandemic began to wreak havoc across the world. Governments responded by shutting down their countries. This slowed commerce and business. All that is true. It had nothing to do with COVID, though. It was just the government's reaction to it. So far, that seems to be the case for Marvel's planned New Warriors project. There's been no news on the books, with Marvel and the creative team remaining silent on its fate. The listing for the issue on Comixology has been removed. Given that it's been 2 years, it's all but guaranteed to have been canceled, even the first issue from ever reaching a comic book store shelf. Because they refuse to comment on its existence anyway, it's best if Marvel simply ignore it and forget the previous plans for the New Warriors title, or at least officially cancel it. This would pave the way for a much better product that could actually attract a new fan base. Well, the one that they used to create the new fan base is going to be much of the same corniness. I mean, this was obnoxious, but it's not unlike anything that they're currently doing with modern Marvel anyway. The next team's big birthday isn't until 2025, so it might be best to wait until then and let the events really fade away. So, to blame it on COVID is being just a tad disingenuous. Or the government's response. What happened here, and I guess it may suck for you guys that thought this, because there were still people trying to salvage it. I don't know if y'all remember. You had those Marvel shields that would even still like, yeah, they could be on to something. Like, no, bro, this is terrible. This is just so bad. And it got made fun of. It was mocked and shamed. It got everything it did deserve, and then it was never put out. And that is Marvel, like something that was so bad that Marvel even to themselves had to say, we're not putting it out. But there's something, that the article kind of mentions that I want to mention for sure. And that is that the fact that it was greenlit by Marvel. And that's the thing I think gets lost. Is when you see something from Marvel and DC that is terrible, and most of it still gets put out. No matter how bad of a concept that it is, it still gets put out. People, we can rag on the artist, we can rag on the writer. I do that, certainly. They're hacks. They're a part of it. Creative team. But you also have to look at the levels of, and this is the point that I brought up on the original video that I did on this, is that the different chains of command and the level that it had to go through. When you think about before a book reaches the shelf, okay, before it's ever even announced to the public that this is going to be a thing, you have the vast amount of editors. You have all the people that greenlight books that are coming out, and none of them said that is terrible. Nobody said there's no way that we putting this out. That should let you know how messed up this company is, and how as my man Jacobulians would say, the tail is wagging the dog. You have uncreative activists who are in control, and they're all in on it for the most part. And they are too chicken crap to even acknowledge that this is something that regular readers simply would not want. Okay? That's the fundamental issue in any company, for that matter, is that you delegate these different leadership roles to certain people, right? It's all about division of labor. But if you have people that are existing in that little machine that can't even be honest with themselves or care enough about the product to try to stop something that is objectively bad from being released under the company brand, shows you how messed up the companies are. And this is why I say they're not going to be salvaged. Don't look at it from just there's this activist writer, or in a movie case, the actors or the actresses. Don't look at it like that, or even the producers or the directors. Look at it like, well, nobody either had the power to say no, or they were all in on it, which the latter is far more likely. That lets you know how jacked up it is. It's not just one person. It's not even just a handful of people. These are corrupt activists that are in positions that they shouldn't be in, but those are the only folks that are getting the gigs, and the people that, of course, brought them in, well, they're also in on the jig. It sucks. This is why I just say, let it die. It cannot be salvaged unless all of the assets are sold off to someone that cares. Marvel and DC is not going to be revived. Period. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.